On today's show, collection, reflection, and dissection time, y'all. It's all about elk hunting miscues or mistakes that we and others experienced this season and our advice on what to do to avoid them. Y'all, it's part 4 of our elk hunting mentality, mistakes, and mentor series. Our actual boots on the ground in 2023 season experiences are as real as it gets to help you learn, prepare, and get on that success train in 2024. So pull up a chair, warm up to the campfire, and let's have a conversation. That discussion are ElkBros shout outs and questions from our awesome ElkBros mailbox. So, my friends, pull up a chair, adjust your volumes just right, and welcome to Blue Collar Elk Hunting.
Welcome to Blue Collar Elk Hunting, brought to you by ElkBros.com. With your host, Gilbert Ornelas, and elk hunting coach, Joe Gilly. You want to hunt elk? They live to hunt elk. Their goal is to share with you what they have learned grinding it out for over 35 seasons, doing what they love. So come on into camp and set a spell. Welcome to Blue Collar Elk Hunters.
Hello there, everyone. If it's your first time with us, glad to have you. Hope you enjoy the show. And as always, for our blue collar hunters following our show and grinding it out with us every week, welcome back to Elk Camp. I'm Gilbert Ornelas, the host of your show, coming to you from Spring, Texas. And joining me tonight's crew, we've got the legend from Cuesta, New Mexico, Mr. R.C. Knox is in the house. We've got the ninja, Mr. Leroy Chavez. Our elk hunting coach himself, Mr. Joe Gilly, is in the house at WWJGD. We got the man with the golden voice, the owner of Western Contours, the owner of Western Fly Covers, and the none other than Mr. Guy Duplanche is in the house. And y'all, from Rosie Country. That's right. From Rosie Country. It's our brother from the Pacific Northwest, world champion elk caller himself and elk whisperer himself. Mr. Tony Gilbertson's in the house.
Tony.
What's going on, guys?
Hey, fellas.
Welcome to the group. And for people that aren't seeing Chav, if you're looking on this on YouTube, that's why we call him the ninja. He's here.
Yeah.
He's here, but he ain't
Can't see him. Can't see him or hear him.
You just can't see him. Oh, man. If anybody's going to have technical difficulties, it's going to be Cabez, man. So he might just
I don't
pop
know
in.
why he just don't walk down to your house,
I
Joe.
know,
He lives 200
man.
yards from you.
Yeah, you
Shoot him
know.
with a 7 mag from there.
You know what it is? He's sitting there and he's got his underwear on instead.
Oh,
That's funny.
Tony, so glad to have you here, man.
Hey, thanks a lot for having me back, guys. I had a blast last time. I'm sure this is going to be fun tonight too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, what's cool about this is it's not, you're just here with the crew, man. You came in to join. You're just part of the elk camp here, helping us out with this, because this is so cool what we're doing here and trying to identify things. And look at this. We've got Guy up there in Colorado, man. We got you over there in the PNW, man. So we've got what we've done this year from Canada down to New Mexico. So there's a lot of representation here, a lot of people that have seen a lot of things, heard a lot of things. So we're really looking forward to that. But one thing I wanted to do is I really wanted to commend you, Corey, Donnie, that whole crew that does something really, really special. And it's something that every year, when you do something like this, I imagine I know it is, because I've done some things with Wounded Warriors that just rock my world. And you guys had the opportunity to do something special with a young man. You want to talk about that?
I can, yeah. So Corey and Donnie, this is my third year. Corey and Donnie invited me into their group of just an amazing group of guys that just do this selfless act of just compassion and kindness for these kids. This year we had a young man who's 14 years old. His name was Sam. and he was in his a little over a year now. He's been in remission after being diagnosed with leukemia.
Right.
His brother was there, who was the bone marrow donor, and then his dad. And we went around. I think it was the first couple of days, and struggled a bit trying to find elk. And then all of a sudden, we just hit the jackpot. And man, I'll tell you, it was absolutely amazing to experience that whole ordeal and how it went down. There was the parents of a young man who has since passed away happened to show up in camp there
from last year, right? Yeah,
from last year, and I'll tell you what, man, there wasn't a dry eye after Sam shot that bull, and to have it all happen in the presence of Austin's mom and dad there, it was pretty special. But yeah, it's life altering experience. We think about the things that happen to all of us on a daily basis that we get frustrated about, but those are pretty minor things compared to what these people have been through. So I think it's just a good reminder for me to just be thankful for what I have and my health and my family, and it's just I reflect on that throughout the year, and I actually get frustrated with myself when I get sad about something or angry about something, because my problems are nothing compared to what some of these folks have been
puts
doing.
things in perspective, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to see that film and how it turns out once they get it done. But it's going to be a special.
And if nobody's if you haven't seen any of these, go over to the Elk 101. Watch the one on Austin last year. If you're not touched by that event, you're a lot tougher than I am, because what Donnie and Corey have done, and they have a whole supporting cast and people that help to make that happen, yourself, and it's just my tip of the hat from the ElkBros to all of y'all for making a difference in a family's life, not just that individual. When you're the father and mother, brother, sister, uncle, grandparent of a young person with a terminal illness, and or that has had a battle like that, we've experienced that going through what we have with Chav, man, and for you guys to do that for people like that, it brings a bright spot in that moment and in those people's lives, with a memory that they'll cherish forever. So thank you for creating a ripple effect with kindness, man.
Yeah, I'm so grateful for the opportunity that Corey and Donnie gave me to be a part of that experience, because it really is special. And Outfitters for Hope is a great organization, and they do this stuff to help these kids.
Is there some place where folks can actually help out that organization to donate to that? It's called Outfitters for Hope.
Yeah, Outfitters for Hope. I think they've done some GoFundMe's in the past. But yes, you can contact Outfitters for Hope and donate. And I would encourage anybody that has a heart for this kind of generous act of kindness to just look them up and
this is the Outdoors Make-A-Wish, basically, right?
Yeah.
So it'd be Outfitters #4hope.org. Outfitters4hope.org.
Number 4.
Number 4.
Yeah.
Number 4, yeah.
Very cool. And and not only was that person was extremely lucky, because none of y'all call worth a crap. So it's amazing that
It absolutely is amazing. I mean, we struggled. I mean, I swallowed one of my calls and choked on
Me
mine.
and you both, brother. Belly.
yeah, I just
Corey
threw
does
down the gauntlet, man. So
Corey does a great job. And this year we had an experience with there were two bull. I'm not going to give away too much of it, but you guys just watch the video when it comes out, because there was a bull that was there that we wish would breed more often and breed more dumb bulls, because this is about one of the dumbest bulls I've ever seen in my life. Like I said, I'm not going to give anything away. You guys are going to have to watch the film, but it was pretty funny.
That's awesome.
yeah, y'all need to give us a way. If that's the dumbest bull ever, we need a waypoint.
Yeah.
We need the waypoint.
There's going to be more of them around there.
I got one, but I'll tell you, it's hard to get a tag in that unit.
Oh, awesome, man. Welcome to us. We're glad to have you here tonight. We got a lot that we're going to get on here, man. Gil, so let's rock this thing.
Yeah, let's get this party started. Head over to the ElkBros mailbox.
ElkBros Mailbox, man.
Chav, you're up first, brother.
Okay, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
sir.
Got you loud and proud.
All right. Okay, this first letter comes from Jonathan Schaefer from North Carolina. And he says, I've done a lot of hunting here at home and in the Midwest and want to hunt elk for the first time. I am an avid bow hunter and hunt with the rifle as well. My question is, for a first timer hunting elk, would you recommend hunting with my bow or going with a rifle to get one under my belt? Well, yeah, interesting.
I can tell you what, Gilbert. I can tell you. Look, here it is, right here. You know,
Yeah.
if you want to hunt elk with
You
a
go
bow,
with
if
the
you want
bow.
to kill elk,
Kill
go with
elk.
the rifle.
With the rifle.
It's true.
Hunting elk like with a bow or slap you in the face like a wet mom.
Like a shitty mom.
Let's see
Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, my viewpoint is I would recommend hunting with a bow. I know it's a little bit tougher in a lot of respects, but at the same time, I think you encounter more elk. Elk, if you've scouted a little bit, they can still be patterned early in the year. And of course, calling is huge. If you can just do a minuscule calling, you can at least locate them. You'll hear some elk. And I think that's part of the adventure is hearing a bull bugle, whether it's close by or at a distance. Of course, the closer it gets, the more exciting it gets. But I know I've bow hunted all my life, never rifle hunted. And I've had a lot of close encounters. And it just being out there in a cool September morning, hearing a bull elk, can't beat that. So that's my take on it. If you guys want to add some more.
What experience are you looking for?
Mm-hmm.
Right. I mean,
Yeah.
it is a 180 in my opinion. I mean, if it's early rifle season, but you're not going to get those close encounters like Chav is talking about, right? I mean, that.
Yeah, it really depends on what they're looking for, huh, guy? I mean, if you're looking for a bow hunting experience where you're actually engaging the animal and calling him to you and perhaps seeing what it's like to hunt them during the rut, much like hunting whitetail in the rut or anything else that you've probably done in North Carolina, hunting, being able to call animals in is the ultimate experience. And I said, and they're right, hunting elk with a bow is hunting elk, right? Every bull I saw this year, I killed him stone dead with a rifle. It's hard. Bow hunting elk is hard. It's not easy, right? But neither is it with a rifle.
I was going to say there's a
layup,
misconception that one is easier than the other in that question.
100%.
Correct.
Because each season brings its
Some challenges.
idiosyncrasies.
Challenges.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I'll tell you this, like here in New Mexico on private land, that first rifle hunt is October 1st, right? Then sometimes we have muzzleloader hunts that are October 6th. And, I've had people that I've known that have rifle hunted elk for 20 years, but they never had been there during when the bulls were talking. And once they did that, it was like, oh my God, this is just awesome.
The
You
bomb.
know, and I mean, it's when you say, like, Gil, you're like, man, all these elk that I saw during archery season, I could have killed stone dead with a rifle.
True.
Well,
Until you got a rifle tag in your pocket.
yeah, until
They're
you have
not
a rifle
around.
Not gonna
tag.
be able to
man.
hunt them during bow
Yeah, they're not
season.
around
So
then.
there's different. It's different. You know,
Absolutely.
you push that a month, and the elk are in a whole different phase. You know, So
Absolutely.
it's different. But what I'm saying is true. If you could hunt, that's why they don't let you hunt. You know, in the I mean, it's true. I mean, it's numbers game. And people in the all the departments of wildlife, fish, and game, they know that if you hunt the rut with a rifle, you're gonna kill twice as many elk. I mean, that's just 100% a fact, right? So they know that, and that's why it's a long season. I'm glad of that for bow hunting because in New Mexico where we hunt, it's 2 weeks. It's not like Colorado where you got a whole month to go hunt, right?
Yeah.
Or other states where you got a whole month to go hunt. So you're up against a time crunch, and I absolutely love it. I'm a bow hunter from the word go. I very rarely pull my rifle out unless I'm going hog hunting or something like that. We do use rifles down here to nilgai hunt and stuff because they're extremely challenging to hunt with a bow. So at the end of the day, I'm a diehard bow hunter. But
Tony?
the rifle hunting's cool.
Yeah, I've had that same question posed to me, and the advice I give them is, if you haven't hunted with a rifle or a bow, go out and bow hunt first, because if you bow hunting and you don't like it for some reason, you want to try rifle hunting, bow hunting is going to make you a better rifle hunter.
Most
That's
definitely.
correct. Yeah,
I mean,
that's good
most
observation.
all of the things that you
Woodsmanship, man.
learn,
Yep.
the woodsmanship, and just learning how the animals react and respond. You can elk talk all year long. They don't just talk during the rut. So just trying to understand how they interact with each other in a herd during the rut, and being able to, I mean, you got to be sneaky, right? You got to be like a ninja, right?
Definitely.
And
That was one of the things that when the mafia started hunting with Joe most of the time, I started hunting with Chav, and man, Chav was the one that really taught me about when to shut up, and we're kind of getting into some content here, but Chav told me when to be vocal and taught me when to be vocal and when to shut up. And when you're in the middle of them, you don't need to say anything. Just sneak on in there like a ninja and put a shiv in one of them, man. I mean, you don't have to say a word if you can sneak up on them.
I do have to say, though, I can't imagine anybody who experienced archery hunting during the rut with bulls. You know me, I'm passionate about calling elk and interacting with bulls. I can't imagine anybody having that experience with a bull standing out there. Well, for us on the coast, 5-10 yards sometimes, just screaming their heads off and tearing stuff up, and not wanting to experience that every year.
No doubt. No doubt. Yeah.
To me, if you're into the intimacy, I guess is the best way I can say it. If it's about the intimacy with the animal, really understanding, knowing, experiencing up close, personal, and knowing that it's not going to be about passing. You hear that a lot with rifle a lot of time. I passed on that, and a lot of times with that, unless you're Guy Duplantier, he passes everything, but
That ain't true. I'm not going to pass everything, you SOB.
but
Just because I ain't shooting a spike or a little raghorn.
But a lot of times, I mean, it's not that you have the opportunity to pass. It's just you don't have the opportunity for the shot, and you're going to be so close so many times. So, like Guy said, it depends on what kind of experience you're in for. If it's, and I'll tell you this, man, I can't say that it's a harder hunt because, as a guide and an outfitter, I see how hard it is during that, later October, November, when those, when situations and conditions and those big boys have gone and hidden and they're only traveling, a few hundred yards so that you're never seeing them. You know, I mean, it gets tough. I mean, you got to really be on your game. You have to hunt hard in all of these situations, and any of them can bring a grind in its own way. But I think it's not so much about that as it is about the intimacy, the knowledge you have to have. And like they said, man, just the first time that you hear that haunting noise on a distance is one thing, but when you have that booger right
your
there,
face.
man, screaming at you and feeling that, oh my, and it just raises the hair on the back
can-
of your neck, man,
You
and
can feel it in your soul, Joe.
it
just
goes all
rattles your
through.
soul, dude.
And I think that's what becomes so addictive. That's why you have
Absolutely.
people
doubt.
Yeah.
flocking to these mountains to have that experience, right? So, yeah.
It's a tough one. I mean, you know, he's talking about
First time.
his first time.
Mhm.
You're right on when you say the intimacy
Intimacy.
of being out there and that close, and but to me it's like any elk is a trophy.
Heck yeah.
And when
Yeah.
you can get that under your belt, it's like, okay, now, you know, I would personally say, yeah, pick up that bow and go try it. Go do it. You know, if you're
Learn how to call, brother.
exactly. And if it happens, that's great. But if you really, I don't know, if you're buying over the counter, if you're going on private, that's a different story too.
Yeah.
Over the counter, that's a tough hunt.
That's what you
The
do is you
rifle.
go over the counter bow or a small, light point draw
Exactly.
unit with your bow. And,
Right.
if you can afford it and got the time off of work and mama's all for it, and go get yourself a landowner tag and,
Yep.
get a rifle hunt that way as well.
Mhm.
I know Gil can point you in the right direction to an outfitter.
Yes,
Well, there's
sir.
even some states that you can hunt archery, and then if you don't kill, you can hunt with your bow, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or vice versa.
Or
Mhm.
vice
Actually
versa,
starts
yeah.
with bow and you could roll into rifle. I think Idaho
Right.
goes
Yeah.
bow, muzzleloader. Wait,
Huh?
bow, rifle, muzzleloader, back to bow. I think it is. And
Really?
I think,
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it's a trip. It bounces, and I think it goes all the way through the end of December, or something like that. And I might be off, so forgive me, folks.
Yeah. The only-
Wyoming's another one. You can go on that special
Wyoming,
tag.
yeah.
And you go, you get your archery hunt in. You don't score there. I believe you can go back. I think it's end of December to the middle or end of January on that special tag for a non-res.
Wasn't that the way it was in Canada? Those guys
Yeah,
up there?
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
in
That's
Canada,
what I
they
thought.
they
Yeah.
go to a certain time, and then they can go to the rifle, right?
Mhm.
Exactly.
That's a sweet. I like that deal there.
Yeah,
Oh, it's pretty
They-
cool.
yeah, it
Put
goes all
some meat on in the freezer.
Yeah.
That's what
So,
mule deer are
Jonathan,
for.
from this group right here. You better start shooting that bow, man. Get it ready.
And learning how to call.
Absolutely.
That's right. Yeah, figured out a call. Pick up some diaphragm calls and just start practicing.
I wonder if that's the crux of the question, right? Because it's a first time elk hunter is the calling, and we've talked about it, and that's again, it's a content thing. Sorry, Gil.
It's okay.
But it could be the issues with the calling that we've talked about and seen through this last season. So
But
Yeah, and we'll spill that tea here coming up pretty soon, right? Get to the juice of that, because it's super. If you're going to go bow hunt during the rut, man, or even early season, you better learn how to speak the language and make real elk sounds.
Start now. Don't wait.
Yeah,
If you're
don't
gonna
wait.
Pick up a
Start
bow and
now.
start hunting next year. You start now. Pick up your calls, get your bow,
Amen.
start shooting.
Great
But,
advice, Tony.
and I'm going to tell you, Jonathan, and this is how I feel about it, because when I first started, I didn't have that ability to call, right? I didn't do that. I used my hunting skill set that I had. So if I had the very same hunting skill set as a rifle hunter, I can still go out and have an incredible close encounters with them, even without calling. Now, is calling as absolutely going to
Game
change the
changer.
game as far as efficiency, but you can have some incredible experiences. So, yeah, get rocking and roll, man. Listen to the show.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Get
there
on
you
our
go.
base camp.
There you go.
All right. out of Atlanta, Georgia, Mr. Kent Denning. Hello, fellas. I love your show and thanks for all the free content you put out. My son and I are complete elk hunting newbies looking to draw our first hunt. For us, all these point systems are somewhat overwhelming. My question is, at 58, my son is 26, should we start applying for tags and purchasing points in each of the western states or just focus our efforts on one state? It seems like the whole point thing can be a long-term money suck if we don't go at it the right way. What would you do? Go hunt elk. Yeah. Don't worry about the frickin' point systems. Put in for New Mexico. Go OTC somewhere. Look for a 0-point draw. Look for a 1-point draw. And just toss your cards in, man. Don't play the points. Just go. Yeah. That's my input on that one.
Let the points fall where they may.
So point system. Invest, yes? No.
No, not at this point. Yeah. Point creep. Percentages are changing, and I'm not saying it's a negative, right? It's great for residents,
but it ain't good for the out of staters.
Right. Non-residents are getting smaller and smaller percentages of tag allocation. Yeah. So point creep is just escalating, right? Wyoming was a 70-30. They're at an 80-20. Give it a couple, 3 years, maybe, and they're going to be at a 90-10 split. I mean, they're pretty aggressive in terms of shrinking that non-res pool. So I would really
do you see
already at a 90-10.
Do you see the point system imploding?
Yes, I think so. With all the point creep that folks have experienced. Now they're starting to look at, things like point banking. If they start doing that, then, guys who have 20 points, if they, depending on how they do the banking, now they're going to be looking at 15, 16 points. They just wasted 4 to 5 years of points, whatever those points cost. I mean, if you look at YO, $45 if you're purchasing points every year. If you don't purchase points for more than 2 years, you lose all your points. So you look at New Mexico, it's a true lottery. Put in for a true lottery, right? Yep. Don't come to Colorado. We don't have any more OTC tags.
Oh, yeah, right.
Go to the PNW. The PNW.
To ElkBros.com.
I was playing points for a long time, and man, you start looking at that allocation and where that stuff is going, and you look at the money that you put in, and you're just, it's not worth it. And then a lot of guys will put in for those states that they have points in. They don't get drawn. And guess what they do? Is they sit at home and wait for the next year. Well, every year you wait, that could have been your last September. Why wait? Just go hunt. Who cares? If it's the worst unit in the state, if it's available tags and they say there's elk, go find the effing elk.
So just asking here for like Colorado, I think even YO, couldn't you say something like, it would be worth your while to get 2 points or 3 points in those states so that you can hit one of those general tags in like YO, or so that you can hit one of those limited tags that are real low point type of tags there? Because I know there's a couple of them that really are 1 or 2 point, even though they're limited draw, they're kept at like 1 or 2 points. They're just not. So it
depends on how many people are applying, right? Yeah, so right. I believe I have 6 points in Wyoming. No, wait, no, that's BS. What year is this?
23.
It's that old age kicking in, man.
I got 5 points. 5 points in Wyoming. I'm putting in for a unit that's well under my 5 points. I still have yet to go back.
What do you need to draw a general tag in YO?
It depends on the unit. It's unit based, right? Yeah. So like here in Colorado, you can put in for a 0-point draw unit. Yeah. It just depends on how many people, put in for that.
Right.
1, 2 points. That's fine. My thing is do not rely on a point system. Go hunt elk. Right. If you want to put in and I don't want to say piss money away, but at this point, playing the point game, that's where it is in my head. By all means, send me the money. I'll mark this paper up with your points every year. You got 1 already. Send me $56.
So what do you think you were investing?
Go hunt.
What were you
Huh?
investing in a year to be able to on points and in what it took to actually? Because I think in some states, not only is the points, you got to get like
You got
a
to get your small game license,
Right,
and
all
things like that, right? So you look at a
$100.
small game license for a non-resident across the West. Say the average is $120,
Yeah.
right? So you got $120 plus you got, if you're putting in for the tag is one thing. If you're just buying the points, you're looking at, $35 to $45. So now I'm pushing $200. That's one state. Now, if I decide that I want to get points in all over the West, say I looked at Utah, I want to go to Utah. I put in for whatever their requirement is, small game or my big game license or some kind of non-res hunting fishing combo at $150, and then I put in for whatever the draw is. Some states are $9, some states are $12, some states are $25. If I don't draw, guess what? I have a tag, or excuse me, a license that I may not use. If I can go OTC in Colorado, well, then I just wasted my money in Utah,
Right.
and there's no getting that back. So I'm just not a fan of it, man. I'm gonna go hunt. I'm gonna do my due diligence. I'm gonna find elk, and that's one of the reasons I started coming to Colorado. It was easy. I could walk into the state, go into Walmart, find a unit, and hunt, right? And then if I want to put in, I put in. If I get lucky, I get lucky. Great. If not, guess what? I'm going to the OTC unit.
But for people that don't live in any of those Western states, their options are getting ready to run out that force them to get into that game.
So again,
But you don't have to. That's my point. Is you don't have to play the point game.
No, you don't.
Right. His question is, should we start playing the point game or just focus our efforts? Now, you don't necessarily have to focus your efforts in one state. New Mexico is that's the best system there is. 110% lottery. You put in, you get it. There's no point system. There's no accumulation. If you're just a lucky SOB like Gilbert, you can hunt the same 2 units 5 years in a row.
Yep.
Mule deer, elk, whatever. Right? I don't see the point in going and spending
Or you can buy landowner
$300.
tags.
Okay, if you go that way.
There you go.
Right.
Yeah.
And I know where you can get them, ElkBrosAdventures.com.
That's the only reason he said it.
Oh, you're
Yeah.
shameless,
Yeah.
dude. You're shameless. But that's what I
I'm
was gonna
not
say.
shameless. I'm giving
You
Mr.
can-
Kent Denning a way to take his boy elk hunting
Well-
every year.
Well, and I don't know if it's every year. I mean, that's why I was going to ask the question. Like, if you played that game in every one of these Western states, what is that going to cost you per year, right? So when you take a look at what that costs, and I see the numbers rolling in your head there, Guy, what do you think that would be?
I'm
Approximately.
saying you're $1,200 if you're
Okay.
across the West.
So you
Easy.
take $1,200, right? And you have maybe an opportunity to do something with a landowner or a trespass, or and if not,
Or all
instead of watching that burn year after year for 5 years,
hunting elk.
you keep collecting that for 3 years, and you're buying a landowner tag, right? So possibly that stuff kind of going too, and that's what's going to happen is they're driving up because of scarcity as well, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, I'm saying, Mr. Denning, that you are 110% correct, that the long-term money suck is exactly what the tag system has become across the West.
Right.
Yeah.
Just move
Very
to one of
much.
those Western states, and you can go get you a tag.
That's the other option. That's right.
Yeah. Like Guy Duplanche did.
Not Colorado, we're full.
We're full.
Yeah.
Well, we're not in New Mexico. Please give us a call. We'll
Guy
have
came
tags
in.
available. You and your son come hunt with us.
I'm probably the worst transplant in the world, dude.
Guy came in and
I
closed the
hate
door.
everybody.
He shut the door behind him when he walked through.
He
Oh,
shut the
man, I
door
hate
and
it.
locked it.
It's
man.
so funny.
Threw the key away.
Hey, thanks for that question, man. Ken.
Really good question.
I've never played that game, and I don't want to play it.
It ain't worth it anymore.
Yeah.
Well, guys, you know what time it is. It's
Shout
time for our ElkBros
Shout
shout outs.
Shout
If you're
out.
new to the show, this is just
Shout
shout
out
out to our
time.
followers in a few cities with the most listeners. Topping our charts this week, though.
What did you say with the most what?
Most what?
Listeners.
Oh,
He said, listen, he
I
said
thought he said
something else.
litterers.
Listeners.
Well, earlier I didn't want to give him guff on it, but since Joe just did, he said Pacific Northwest.
I say Pacific.
Hey,
I sure might have.
Guy, the way you said that made it sound a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. He said it, and I
Guys drinking Bud
don't want
Light
to interrupt
tonight.
him. I'm always goofing, so I just kept my mouth shut until Joe called on him.
I'm getting us under control. First, we're going to reward some reviewers, y'all.
You started it, Joe.
For those folk that leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or give us a comment on our YouTube channel and include their name and where they're from, we are placing their names in our ElkBros Spin a Winner Wheel. So here it is, y'all. The ElkBros Spin a Winner Wheel. Today's winner will get one of Travis O'Shea's incredible Wapiti River Outdoors diaphragm calls and one of our new Burnham Red diaphragms produced by our friends over at Native by Carlton. There she blows right there, man. So we're going to go ahead and pull that up.
Oh.
Here we go, ready to rock. And
Yes, sir.
man, we got John Childs, Scott Schwab, Steve Osborne, Jason Schultz, Keith Durr, Justin St. James, Eric Reed, Ty Brooks, Bill Steiger, Timothy Welch, Charlie Newberry, Tom Roth, Rob Greer, Justin Gotham, Chris Talbot, Randy N. from Santa Fe, Scott Winter, Chris McKelvey, Cody Bosk, John Waldron, Ed Morris, Jim Coyle, Richard Williamson, and Coach Brandon Starr. And we are rocking.
Oh, I hear it now.
Do y'all hear it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Is
Ed
it?
Morris,
Is
Ed
it?
Morris, Ed
Is it?
Morris.
Is it?
Come on.
Louisville, Kentucky.
Our brother Ed Morris.
All right.
Congrats,
Yes,
Ed.
sir.
All right, Ed.
Congrats, Ed.
Ed, congratulations, man. You got a couple calls coming your way.
My Facebook
If
brother.
listeners, if you haven't checked out Ed and the boys over there at Grizzled Outdoors podcast, you need to. It's great.
It is great.
Yeah, it really is a good, informative podcast that they put on for you AARP age elk hunters. I'm the few of
I
them
resemble
here.
that remark, bro.
But it is a fun podcast, super informative. Those guys hit conservation out of the park. They do a great job over there, so please check them out.
Chav, you got the first city.
Okay, Marcia. This week's #1 top listening city is located on the north shore of the Chicago metropolitan area. Because of its practice facility is nearby, Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, and other Chicago Bulls lived here in their heydays. It was also the location for several movies, including Ferris Bueller's Day Off, Weird Science, 16 Candles, Home Alone, and Uncle Buck.
Oh my God.
It is also the birthplace of John Robert Wright's, most likely known as Robert Reed, and his role as patriarch Mike Brady on the ABC sitcom The Brady Bunch, which aired from 1969 to 1974. And this is in Highland Park, Illinois.
Island Park. Yeah. Grew up with the Brady Bunch, y'all. I'm sorry.
So,
Me too.
saw all
It's
those
last
movies.
season, and I was born.
It's first season I was born. Yeah.
And except for Weird Science and 16 Candles, that's kind of an A-list for Bueller.
Oh, dude, are you
Yeah.
kidding me? Weird Science is
Great.
absolutely an A-list.
Really?
movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my
Absolutely.
God, dude!
Great
Oh,
movie.
you never seen it?
I've never seen it. No.
Uncle
You
Buck.
haven't?
Oh, dude! Oh,
Uncle
you
Buck
and
gotta
Home
see
Alone?
Weird
Uncle
Science.
Buck.
That's every
It's
that's
just
every
out
teenage
of this
boy's
world.
dream.
Yeah,
Definitely.
I
Weird
saw them all.
Science?
Wait,
Yeah.
It is every teenage boy. Well,
I don't think I went to a movie. I don't think I went to a movie until I was 16, man. But it should have
Well, they
been.
didn't have movie theaters until you were 18.
I had to go to the saloon
Right.
in burlesque shows, Joe. Ride your horse down there.
Joe was dropping pennies in the little wood projector deal. Looking,
Oh my
what's that boy doing behind that curtain?
Oh. How is it that Chav and RC are both older than me, but I always catch this older than thing up here? You know?
Chav has never
saw-
given me anything but love, and RC is my cook and silversmith.
You're gonna have to step up your game, Joe.
I guess, man. That's what happens, man. Oh, okay. Up next, this small village with a population of just 75 in 2020 was originally called Mayo. I believe it's Mayo. I like a little bit of Mayo after settler H.T. Mayo. With the arrival of the railroad officials requested citizens to rename the town. Offended by the request, Mayo replied, "You can name it Dante's Inferno for all I care." Well, y'all, folks must have liked his suggestion. Big shout out to Dante, South Dakota.
Careful what you wish for.
Dante, South Dakota.
Dante.
Oh, have you been there, Gil?
Yes, been through Dante and the next city. So, yep, been through
We
most.
don't want to hear
most
nothing
all
about
over
the
North Dakota
fishing
and South
or the
Dakota.
restaurants.
Yeah. I've been, that whole Bakken area up there, Joe, from
Here we go.
Montana all the way over through North Dakota and South Dakota. They're finding even more stuff down there now, and even Nebraska, they got some geothermal stuff going on. So the upper Midwest is going to get popping before it's over with,
Well,
unless they just ban all drilling and fracking altogether. And then if they do that, we're all in a lot of trouble.
Well, all I want to say, man, is if they had a population of 75 in 2020, I don't know how much it's grown since then. So this is a huge shout out for you guys to be on our top listening list. The whole family's got to be
yeah.
listening. So,
Yeah, everybody.
and
Family tree might not fork, Joe.
And-
It might be all one solid
well,
family.
well, Ian and Cimarron and my wife from Maxwell, we're from small town country where you stick your head out the window, you're out of town. So we are super proud to have Dante, South Dakota on this list.
Okay, Joe, next up, once the horse trading and livestock center of the country, our next top listening city was originally Fort Keogh, named after Captain Miles Keogh, whose horse was the lone survivor of a battle of Little Bighorn. Once a year, the town puts on a bucking horse sale for rodeo stock and buyers and breeders in none other than Little Miles City, Montana.
Miles
Just
City,
west
Montana.
of Williston.
You
I
know,
had to stay in Miles City one time because all the hotels were booked in Dickinson, North Dakota. So you couldn't get a hotel room. So I had to drive to Miles City to get it. Look, man, I'm telling you, up there, it's desolate. I told you. When I drove across the state of North Dakota, I didn't see a car for 2 days. I told my wife, I said, call my mom and see if the rapture come. You didn't see a daggum car for 2 hours. I said, call mama and see if she answers the phone, because not, the rapture doesn't come because we ain't seen a soul in 2.5 hours. So
Gil is the only person in the world that can make you feel like you've only walked a block in your life. Good Lord, man.
straight true, man. I
Oh,
couldn't
my
get a
God.
room. So I had to drive to Miles City, man. Yep, and man, that ain't much better either. I don't think I saw but 2 cars going to Miles.
yeah, the only thing
It's
I
a
want to say
different
about
country.
this, man, if that horse was the lone survivor of the Battle of the Bighorn
Yeah.
and I was Captain Miles, I think I'd have stayed on my horse.
That's probably why he didn't stay on his horse. He's the only one that survived.
Yep.
Captain Miles is dead. The horse survived. He was the only smart one.
This city was the last civilized stop before the unexplored West. It was first settled by French trappers who named it Les Petites Côtes, or Little Hills, then renamed it San Carlos. San Carlos was anglicized to its current name after the U.S. acquired it from France during the Louisiana Purchase. This is the place if you want to visit the starting point of the Lewis and Clark expedition. St. Charles, Missouri.
St. Charles, Missouri.
Charles, Missouri.
Missouri, one of them.
Yeah, the northern people say Missouri. The southern say Missouri.
Yeah, I asked one of them that one time. And they absolutely have a preference.
They do. They do. Yeah.
Missouri,
For
is that the preference?
The
it
ones from the
depends on
north.
where you're from.
Yeah.
Missouri.
Northern Missouri.
Missouri.
Yep.
Main
let's
content.
yeah, there we go, guy. On today's show, let's get back to talking to those mistakes or misconceptions from the past season with tips on the possible ways to avoid them next season, right? I
Yeah.
mean, that's kind of what we're here to do, is help everybody avoid what we went through, and everybody on our crew tonight, man, what problems they saw and how to mitigate those problems for next season.
So look, and not only us, like we get the opportunity to hear from, see, experience with other people, as well as our own. We get a chance to see some of that. And what I think is really cool is like when we're doing our coaching, y'all, we get the opportunity to see a whole different perspective, because we get those people that come from all over the United States, and the stuff that we have been feeding them, we get to see how they apply it and how their perspectives are and what they see from it. And then I hear a lot of things, just being out in the woods, talking to people, you hear so many things that a lot of times, because when people tell me something out in the woods, I don't want to sound like, I'm criticizing them or this or that. And so sometimes you just bite your tongue a little bit, unless they ask you your opinion. Doesn't mean you have to give it to them. But we hear some of these issues and problems, and a lot of them are common things that we see, hear, and experience, right? So that's what we want to do. And we have, like we said earlier, man, we got an incredible group here. All different ages, degrees of ugliness, so we get the opportunity to cover a lot of this, man. And
Degrees in ugliness, we got all masters and PhDs in this group, buddy.
hey, if you can't be handsome, at least you can be handy, right? So
That's right.
yeah. So this is so huge, because all of y'all listening out there, I just talked to a fella today on, we have a new episode coming out. I want you to look for it, where I just give a phone call to somebody that has sent in an email or a message about their season. And I just give them a phone call and start recording that as an episode. And we're just calling it Elk Camp Conversations. It's just, y'all, it's just, regular Joe, just like me out there, people, nobody in the industry that have had experiences that you're going through. So I give them a call and we just let it go from there. And that's what we want to do with this. Is when I talked to that gentleman today, he said, I heard this and I listened to this, but sometimes you just got to experience for yourself. But you can sure make that decision that I'm not going to do this twice a lot quicker, because you have some background of what other people have gone through, right? So, sure. Gil, last time when we left off, and I said we were going to come back to you, boss, right? Yeah. You were talking about how you saw issues with decisions once hunters got a response. And I think, so everybody understands that, I think you're talking about once hunters got some kind of response from an elk that they were either calling or raking or making some kind of noise. And then, and the issues that you saw with their decisions after that. You want to kind of go into that a little bit?
Yeah, and it's twofold. And Knox, you can jump in here with me too, because you were with us. You were with me most of the time in Canada. We were hunting with some guys that are younger, that are, not as experienced, but these guys are really good callers. I mean, they're good at calling, right? And we happened to be with them, and they did some night bugling. We found a bull that was, or a group of bulls that were together in this little pocket, and we decided to jump out on them on first light the next morning. And when we pulled up on them, the night bugle, the first bugle we hit, man, it was faint because the wind was going, but we heard the bull answer us. So we got out of there, kind of marked where we were at, got out of there, and then RC Knox, myself, and our crew from Canada, we jumped in there the first thing that morning. Well, we didn't even hardly get the door closed on the truck, and I mean, bull. We actually kind of went down to where we thought he was going to be above it, right? And then he's right there at the top of this ridge, and he bugles, and right down in the bottom, bull. Well, for me, the first time I get a response, the first thing I do is check the wind, right? Which way is my wind going? And we had checked it going in there, but I knew once we started dropping down that the wind was going to change for us. So Knox and I are in the back, and these guys want to just bail off and go right to him. And man, the wind's going right to the bull, right? I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. We can't do that. We got to come around, right? So if we have bailed off, I mean, our wind's going to go right to him and he's going to shut up and we're going to wonder, man, where did he go? But us knowing what we knew we needed to come up out the way we came in and circle around and get below him, right? And take the long way around. Well, it almost, and we did it, okay? And it took us a little while, and man, we had a bulldozer. We had a D9 cat in front of us, man. Boy, man, I mean, he could make a hole like I could, brother. I'm telling you, that young man was a big fella, and he went through the woods, falling down. I mean, we're falling down, all kinds of stuff, and I felt like we got in. We didn't get deep enough, right? We stopped a little premature, and that's where they wanted to set up and call. It was one little pocket opening, and there's 4 of us in there with bows, right? And we got to where we needed to go. He hits the call, and the bull is literally 65 yards from us in the brush. Okay. And I mean, when the bull opens up, he just goes absolutely bonkers. You see trees shaking. I mean, here he comes, right? We did exactly what we needed to do to get around him, right? But we didn't get to the right setup, right? So we did what we needed to do to get to get around him and not have him hear us. But I guarantee you what he did hear was a whole bunch of crashing and banging and limbs breaking and stuff like that, us coming down below him. So that probably piqued his interest to begin with. And when we got in there and started making some cow sounds, when Dylan started cow calling, and then, I chuckled one time, dude, it was on like Donkey Kong. He come roaring through there and almost trampled RC Knox, right? If the bull walks to his right, the bull's dead at 3 feet. Knox kills him, right? But he decided to take a hard left, and when he did, he left everything from the neck down covered. All we could see is his head and his antlers and and it is so thick there, right? So the decisions, once you get a response and your setup after that, will depict how well your scenario turns out for you, right? Knox, you got anything else to add to that?
No, I think you're right on. I mean, you just have to play your onyx and make sure that there's not another bigger park somewhere or a bigger opening. I felt like, I mean, we were what? We were right on top of each other, and it was just a real tight situation there, but it could have happened. But
Knox is at full draw. I'm at full draw.
Yeah.
And all I need is a sliver to slip it in. I mean, it's 12 yards, all I need is a sliver, but it looks like this, I mean, it is absolutely tough to slip it in there. You can see his head and his neck, right? Sticking up above the bush, man. That stuff, those tallow trees are so thick in there. And had we looked on Onyx prior to diving off, if we'd looked on Onyx, we'd have saw that opening 75 yards below us where we could have called him in, and he would have been 45 yards-ish, coming into us, and we'd have been on the other side of that. The stop and scan spot would have been in a kill zone. You know what I mean?
Right,
For him to come in there and look at. So, this year, Coach, go ahead, Joe.
Do you think part of your error was, so I'm trying to list this out for people, do you think part of that area was you had a tool to be able to tell what was in front of you, where that animal was, and I mean, because a lot of times, we know it's hurry up and slow down sometimes, but it would have been worth your while to, to check that out for that moment,
check it out,
and then make a decision.
It would have, because we didn't need to make a sound yet, right? Yeah. In that tight quarters, we really didn't need to make a sound till the setup was right, but he heard us piling in there, and you heard him above us go, like, and then he went, and it was on, dude. I mean, he just come barreling through there. And it was a beautiful 6x6. I mean,
Yeah.
The best bull we saw the whole time we were there, and look, I got him within daggum 52 yards of him when I called him back for that young man, and I'm telling you, it was just bad luck, a little bit of bad luck. But had we had done a little bit better diligence of looking on our onX and seeing that opening below us, we could have really, I think we would have been a lot more successful. Now, listen, the bull walks to his left, he's dead. RC Knox going to kill him stone dead, right?
Yeah.
So it's the difference of
It wasn't
18
his day
inches
to
one
die.
way, 18. Yeah, just wasn't his day to die. But
Yeah.
again, I think you give yourself better odds by looking and using the tools that you have.
Yeah.
And we didn't do that. We didn't do that because it took us a long time to get around there. So I'm sure Dylan, our host, felt like he was pressed for time. He didn't want that bull to lose interest and get away. So I'm sure he's feeling like, man, it's taken us a long time to go around like these. And listen, man, these guys were so accommodating to me and RC. They would listen to anything we had to say, like, hey, no, we don't need to do that. Let's do this. And they were all like, oh, we didn't think about that. I mean, they were just so pliable and so coachable. And I'm like, look, fellas, I'm not trying to tell you how to do anything, but I'm telling you, we bail off right here. This is over. We're done, man.
And I think on your time thing, worrying about, the time of going around and losing them and stuff, you got to remember that bull was night bugled. That bull was still in the same place when y'all got there in the morning. So I don't think you had too much to worry about there. But when I looked at what you said here about issues with decisions once you get a response, it also made me think about it in a different way because of the things. And I absolutely think this is a huge area because I've seen so many people that they're out there and they give a location bugle and then boom, they hear one off there a half mile away and they're looking to set up.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay?
And that's,
so instead of cutting that distance and making
yards.
something happen there. So that's in one thing there is that, I see so many people that once they get a response, they think that I need to get right here and make that bull come all the way to me. Right. And it's going to be way more efficient if you make it easy on that bull to come.
We did, man. We run right up into his kitchen, man. I mean, seriously, in his hip pocket. Versus when RC and I were coaching this year on our coach hunt, where I had a hunter with me who's never hunted elk before, right? And as soon as I got the first response opening morning, I mean, we set up and just sitting there listening to a break day, and I a location bugle and the bull blows up right in front of me. That's about 350 yards, and I'm looking at and we're coaching, we're not guiding, right? I'm looking at my hunter and he hears and he turns around and looks at me and, I cow call and the bull blows up again and he's looking at me and I'm looking at him. I'm going, all right, brother. And he's like, well, I'm like, man, I really can't tell this guy what to do. We should be running up that hill right there, and putting eyes on this bull and going to him. And he just stays put like I'm going to call the bull to us, And once the bull chuckled at us, I knew what we needed to do, right? I mean, he's calling us to him, right? He's saying, y'all come on over here, man, and I never got him fired up enough to where he's lip balling or where he's challenging and he's storming in there on us, right? So I knew what he wanted. He wanted to have us cut that distance, right? And for me, that's exactly what I'm going to do. But our new hunter didn't know those things, right? He didn't know that we need to cut that distance to try to get eyes on and get within that 100-yard bubble, right? To really be able to set up and be efficient in the setup. Now, there were multiple bulls there that morning, so that made it a little different too, because he's hearing other bulls sounding off. Even more important for us to move and get in the middle of it, right?
I think going to what JoJo said there is, I think, and then even with that hunter Gil, is that I think when you're just breaking in, we'll say, understanding the distance at which you're hearing that bugle is a challenge, right?
Definitely.
You hear those first few bugles and you're like,
they're right
you're
on
looking
top of us.
right, like you think you're right on top and he's 400 yards off.
Yeah.
And then depending on the topography, right, you may just be in a spot to where that sound is just piercing through you. I mean,
Yeah,
so I think that's one of the challenges too with that premature setup. And that was one of the things that I sent Joe. And I was going to ask Joe if we could switch my topic around there because it fit perfectly, and that came in. But I think a lot of it, there's so many factors when you hear that bugle, and folks don't realize that that's 400 yards and not 60.
Yeah, and I want to tell you guys, because all of us know that we've got some things we're going to talk about tonight, but if you see something that relates to it and you have a different aspect of that very same thing, rock with it, man. Go ahead and put that in there because, not only is the premature setup an issue to a response, the other thing is not letting it be dynamic once you've set up and you get a response. So a lot of times you get a response, you get into a setup, and then all of a sudden that response sounds in a different direction where that animal's moving, and you stay in a setup, you lock into that, and not wanting to move instead of putting yourself where you're going to have shooting lanes or be in a better position when that animal does, or just friggin' moving because he's like dropping off the hill and going a side hill and you got to get over there. So I see a lot of times people, they lock up, they lock up when they get the response, right? It's like, okay, man, he responded to me, he's coming. And that can be an issue because a lot of times they hear a response and they think that's actually, they translate that into a bull responding to them and coming to them when that's not always the case. And then you do have the bull that's coming and he shifts direction for a reason or one reason or another. And then you're not dynamic enough to put yourself in a better position to be able to get that shot. So you know what I'm talking about, Tony?
I do. I think I hear this every year in the woods. You talk about people, especially folks that haven't archery hunted that long, and they hear that first bugle. That is probably one of the most common mistakes that people make is to set up, 400 or 500 yards or more from that bull because you hear that bull bugling and they think that bull's going to come to them. It's not going to happen 9 times out of 10.
Right.
They're going to sit over there and they're going to call back at you. I mean, it's that game. You're just, hey, I'm over here. Hey, okay, I'm over here. You've got to close the distance. Otherwise, you're going to play that game for an hour and they're going to go to bed and they're going to shut up.
They'll get disgruntled with it and they'll be quiet.
I want to make sure that people know that when a bull is calling back and forth to you and not coming in from 400 yards, 300 yards, that's not a hung bull. Okay? That's not a hung bull. That's a bull that has no reason to come in right now, right? Has zero. Now, when you get up there and you get in that bull's dish and you can see that critter out there at 80 yards, you're seeing him and he's not coming any closer. That's a hung bull. And there's a reason why he's hung because he should be seeing that other elk, right? So, people think and they hear, okay, he kept screaming, but he wouldn't come in. Well, yeah. You have to cut that out.
Setup will make it or break it for you. That's for sure.
It really will. And even when you got a great setup, it can make it, things can get squirrely in a heartbeat. Joe and I have hunted together for many years, and Joe's an unbelievable elk caller. And, we're pretty good woodsmen, man. We can get right up in the middle of them, put the Mohican sneaking on them and get right in the middle of their kitchen. One year, Joe and I were together and we actually got between these 2 big herd bulls. And I mean, these bulls were big bulls between him and 25 cows, Joe? I mean, we actually got between both those bulls and the cows, and they're coming, brother. I mean, they got no choice. They're going to follow those cows, right? And we're 18 yards off the trail the cows just passed by us. And this game is game, set, match. Big 7x7, big 6x6, man. I'm talking hogs. Here they come. And one bull off about, half a mile, Joe? Bugles. Both those bulls turned around and walked out of our life, man. I mean, walked out of our life.
Left the cows, man. Left the
cows.
Yeah.
Left them.
I was like, I mean, we're like, and I'm telling Gil, dude, get ready. This is
it. He's like, this is
Yeah.
it. And I'm like, oh yeah, this is gonna be a slam dunk. Here they come. They're coming down the drainage that those cows came from. They get within, I don't know, 185 yards from us, man. They're at frontal, and that bull hears that other bull, and he turns around, and both of them just stretch back to where they came from.
Yeah.
And Joe and I let them get out of sight, and then, man, we put it on the feet, dude, and ended up calling another bull in that I couldn't get a shot on, but it was a different satellite bull. But those bulls left that whole herd of cows, and I don't know, went half a mile away. I mean, it was just uncanny to watch that happen. But you can put yourself in some of the best positions, and it just ain't that bull's day to die, man.
Yeah,
That
and so
happened to me this year.
Well, how's that?
Well, we were over in Idaho, and I was a shooter that day, and I had Jermaine and Eric was set up the ridge from me calling, and we had this bull going, and I kept working my way down the ridge because he wasn't getting any closer, which is something that you know. I mean, you get into what you were saying earlier, Joe. You've got to put yourself in the position that it takes to kill that bull, right? You can't just
Absolutely.
set up and stay there. So
No.
I'm moving in on that bull. I've got trees. I'm watching to cover because I'm going down. There's this shale chute between me. This bull's on either side of the ridge from me, and all of a sudden, we see movement down there. So we're 67 yards from this bull, and all of a sudden I hear this crashing, and his cows left him, come over on my side, on my ridge, and I'm like, oh, game on. This is an archery hunter's dream right here. You get those cows over on this side, and Eric and Jermaine up the ridge from me, and I'm right here. I pick up my tube and I scream at that bull, and I challenged him. You think that bull come to me?
No, he ran.
He absolutely ran. I had his cows right here, 50 yards from me. They walked right up to me, and that bull takes off and hightails it out of there.
Yeah. All you need to do is just hang in there, huh?
So
Yeah,
those
you just
cows.
don't know.
Did you ever get eyes on that bull, Tony?
We did. Yeah.
What kind of bull? What kind of age would you have given him?
You know, he was a big bull. I saw his body and just part of his rack, but he was probably, I don't know, 5 or 6 year old bull, I'm guessing. He was a
Wow.
big
And
bull.
what time of year was this?
This was the 17th of September.
Wow, man. That is just so curious, man, like that, because, when the cows leave, the cows are hearing Jermaine up there, evidently, right? And
Jermaine and Eric are up there.
thinking they had a little bit better suitor than what they were with at the time,
Yep.
left them. And
Maybe
they
he
must
was
have,
cranky,
because
Joe.
he wasn't willing to
Bull
fight
must have
for him.
been cranky, and they treated him rough or something.
Yeah.
Man.
Oh, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if he was.
Dinners.
I mean, he could have been a satellite bull that pulled off a few cows, and he'd got his butt whooped, and he's like, I've heard that before. I'm out of here. You can have my ladies. I'll go get some other ones.
I'll go find me some more to pick on. Yeah.
It's a long season. There's more fish in the sea, right?
That's right. It just goes to show you, you just don't ever know. You can do everything right.
Yeah.
And something can happen, and everything goes down the tube.
And then I've seen Joe call them from a mile off. I mean, seriously, 3/4 of a mile, and you hear one bugle, and Joe's on them big lungs of his, and he gets rolling, and here they come. And we've just about give up on a bull, and it's like, well, he ain't coming. And then I say, man, hit it one more time, and then he's been coming the whole time. He's just been a long way off, and then here he comes, and we put him down, and caught him across a barrier too, man. I mean,
Uphill.
You just never uphill. Yeah. There's things that you're not supposed to do,
Yeah.
So it just, like you said, Mr. Tony, it's 100%, you're called. You knew if you challenged him, he should come try to run you over,
That's right.
and it backfired in your face. So you just don't know. You read the situation. Sometimes we're right and sometimes we're wrong,
Yeah.
but you have to do something.
Grinders tuning in, thank you for listening to the Blue Collar Elk Hunting Podcast. Our goal is to share our knowledge and help you flatten that learning curve so that you too can have some of the very same incredible experiences that have given all of us here at ElkBros a lifetime of memories. If you like what you hear or see, you can get all of this information plus so much more from our base camp elk hunting training camp. This course will be like nothing you have ever experienced in concept and structure, using success-based coaching techniques that will elevate your confidence and skill sets, allowing you to see, visualize, understand, and relate every coaching point to what lies ahead, the next step, the next thought process, the next success. By tapping my 30 years of teaching and coaching experience, our camps are developed considering multiple learning modes with text, visuals, audio, as well as video. And base camp will benefit those new to elk hunting all the way to the 10 to 15 year vet. So if you are looking for that one thing to help you fill that tag this year, invest in the most important piece of equipment there is, you and your elk hunting knowledge. You can find the Blue Collar Elk Hunting Academy and the Base Camp Training Camp at ElkBros.com. That's ElkBros.com. Keep dreaming of the screaming, believing in achieving, and most of all, keep grinding.
I mean, the bull very well could have had another way to get to his cows that didn't bring him through Tony. I did this.
Yeah, you just don't know. But
2 years ago.
To pull this all together, when it comes to you getting a response, you need to be aggressive. For us, and are you going to blow some of those situations up? Yes, you are.
Yeah.
But by being aggressive, you're going to find yourself in more killing situations than not. And, so what that means is that always going to cut the distance to get it on that critter. You got to read the terrain. You got to read the amount of vegetation you have. You always got to, in being aggressive, you have to put yourself in the best position when you hear a response to make sure that you have shooting lanes. If you have to move, you're going to move. And you got to do those things when you're responding, to take a look at the situation you have. If you don't know where you're at, use your tools and make that a better situation. So that's where I'd like to give that advice on that. Guy, you had an area that you wanted to talk about.
Yeah, miscues or not reading the cues.
Explain that.
So, I mean, as simplistic as possible, sending out a locate, getting a response, and then immediately start challenging, or hear a bull locating, hit him with cow calls, he locates back to you, and you immediately start chuckling or challenging. I mean, you talk about in terms of sign, right? You got, when they're stripping their velvet, you'll get those rubs on the trees, and the guy will go in there and, we got these rubs. That rub has, probably 2-3 month and a half of age on it, and then they get stuck in that area because they're seeing a couple of velvet, where they're rubbing the velvet off, and it's not actually a rub, a territorial rub or a rut rub, air quote, if you will, is just not reading those signs or reacting to sign the wrong way. Whatever that is, droppings, the rubs, starting with one approach and calling and then going into something else, and your response just shuts off, right? You misread the situation, or I don't know. I've seen it all, man. The miscues are the biggest one.
So how do you help them out with that, man? What would be your advice on, because, all right, so that they're having miscues and misreads. What would be your advice on that?
I mean, the biggest thing for me is if you start off, it's been said a million times, right? If you're going to start off your call and sequence scenario, whatever it is, start soft and work your way up, then you really can't go wrong. You will blow some situations. But if you start off with a cow call and that bull's responding, what is he responding? What is he saying in response? Yep. Now complete that action with like in kind. Do not just go in. Yeah. We hear a bugle and everybody wants to right? And it kills it. It's like, wait a minute. Yeah. You just started with soft calf calls.
Yeah.
and you responded to yourself with cow calls. Now you're throwing a bull in there with some aggression. You have no idea what you're dealing with. And that bull just said, hey, Tony, I'm over here.
And they'll
Right. I mean,
play.
that's
Read the
right.
room.
That was,
You got to read the room.
freaking room.
Yep.
I mean, it is 80% of some of the stuff I saw was just not reading the cues, and not understanding what was going on in the situation.
Yeah. So, Tony, over there with the Rosies, what do you see are the biggest miscues with them?
You know, it's kind of the same. You know, Rosies are they act a lot like Rocky Mountain, but they do. These Rosies chuckle a lot more than what, you know, like you'll hear a full-on bugle on Rocky Mountain bull. These Roosevelts, for whatever reason, not that they don't bugle, but they do a lot more chuckling, it seems. But, you know, kind of back to what I was saying before, you know, about reading the room, you know, to Guy's point, you know, if you get a bull to respond and your first reaction or your first response back is to challenge that bull, 9 times out of 10, that bull's going to turn and hightail it out of there. You know, work your way into it. And then for me personally, I try to emulate what that bull is saying. I try to mimic what he's saying, because I'm not saying anything differently than what he is. You know, at some point, you know, if we keep playing that game and he's hung up out there, then yeah, I'm gonna probably try to challenge him to see if that does something to change the atmosphere or his mood.
So you're just going to stick your toe in the water a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That's the safest. I've found that's the safest bet, regardless of whether it's Roosevelt or Rocky Mountain.
Yeah. Yeah. The whole misread type thing. And I think that strictly everybody, I think it comes from what everybody has seen, you know, where, I mean, in calling competitions, the thing that turns you on is, you know, somebody screaming out a bugle and, you know, getting all the chuckles and the chuckle scream and, you know, those kinds of things. Yeah, it's freaking awesome, man. But, you know, again, you got to understand the bull you're dealing with, number one, right? You got to understand, why did that bull respond? What did he respond to? And give him what he wants. And sometimes that is not another bull sometimes, right?
Yeah,
and
90% of the time it's not. Yeah.
And if it is another bull, you can introduce another bull without giving him a relationship to size, temperament, and things like that. So you can use things like raking. They don't have any idea how big that bull is. You know, when they hear a glunk, when they hear a huff, or when they hear a little moan or something like that, they have no idea how big that other bull is over there. So there's different things you can do. Now with the Rosies, I've heard the very thing that you talked about is, you know, that chuckling, and that's the way it was in Canada too with the Rockies, man. Yeah. You know, it was that way in New Mexico last year as well.
Yes, sir.
Oh, really? Interesting.
Yeah,
Lots of
absolutely.
chuckling, man.
Yeah.
You know, over here,
And the year before too, Joe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, in the Coast Range over here where I hunt, it is. I mean, the big timber is almost all gone. It's patches of reap rod, Doug fir, and the vegetation is so dense that, you know, they feel safe. If they're out in a clear cut somewhere, they run into that reap rod. If you don't get in there with them,
right,
and get close enough to them, you're not going to have success at all. If you get in there with them, your success is going to increase a little bit, but it's so thick, the shooting lanes are you know, next to none. But that goes to what Gilbert was saying earlier about using those tools, because sometimes you can find little pockets, little meadows in that you'd have no idea were there, and you can work your way, and they'll go in there and bed down, and you can work in there and set up in those areas too and do some calling. But yeah, I always start out with cow calls because they're the least offensive. They're not threatening, and work your way up from there.
or
Over before a fighter.
yeah, you know,
Yeah.
even if you're giving calf calls and you get a bull that responds to that, you don't have to turn to bull sounds.
No.
Stay with what he
No.
responded to, and that's what
Yeah,
you're saying,
absolutely.
Guy, right?
yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. I mean, it's like, you know, you got the dimmer on and you set the mood, and then I don't want to offend anybody.
Red lights on.
Yeah.
As soon as they start to drop, right, you turn the lights on full bore. You're like, ah!
Yeah. No, that's right. You know, I had a scenario this rifle season that, you know, and I was actually texting Joe back and forth, and I knew that if I gave up, I was in a real skinny piece of real estate, man. And I got eyes on elk that are about 700 yards from me, right? In a big group, a big herd with some really big bulls, some big satellite bulls and some really big herd bulls. And I text Joe, I said, look, if I make a sound here, I'm probably toast, right? But they're so far on the other side of a barrier that if I don't make a sound, I'm never going to get an opportunity to get them to me, right?
Yeah.
So I knew the only chance I had was never to appeal to the bulls that were in that group. It was to appeal to the lead cow, right? And get her maternal instinct. So I used a lost calf call to try and pull her to me. Dude, I have never seen a stampede for 600 and some odd yards. I hit that lost calf call 3 times, and I thought my hunter was going to faint. He said, "They're all coming." I said, "I cannot believe this." I just sat there in
Maternal
total
instinct.
Yeah, but I went right after her maternal instinct. She lifted her head up, man, and she took off down that mountain, dude, and brought all of the elk with her. Except she stopped about 130 yards from the barrier that I needed her to cross. And I had a decoy out on the other side of the barrier, but I think the lighting was getting so dim that she didn't really see the decoy very good. And I had to shut up then because I'm in a really small, and when I say a small piece of real estate, man, I'm talking about a piece of brush that's just concealing me and my hunter, right? And I mean, so Jab and I've been there before, so I had to be quiet and then just kind of appeal. Every now and then I'd hit that lost calf call, and man, she'd throw her head up and come as close as she could, and the bull would hook her back. He would hook her around, and man, my hunter begged. He's like, "Man, can we just shoot into that?" I'm like, "No, man, we can't. Don't even put a round in your gun yet, you know." But again, I knew that if I tried to bugle and this, that, and other, I was probably gonna turn them off and maybe have those bulls hook those cows a different direction, you know. So just using that lost calf call was huge, man. I've never seen that many elk come to me in one set, you know. There were probably 60 head of cows in that group, man.
Well, I'd like to give you, because most of the time when we talk about this, we talk in single depth. And what I mean like that is so I give a calf call and he responds, and I'm staying with the calf call and he responds. That's what I call the original depth of the situation. Sometimes you got to go to different depths by reading the cues. For example, if now I'm giving that calf call or a cow call, and that bull has come into a certain distance and is now demanding me to come to him, which I'm not able to do, now I might have to go to a second depth to change that situation, because now he's demanding for that cow. So I'm not able to go to him. I can shut up. Now there's times that you can just do that and then let him come and see and try to scent check. Don't ever discount that. Sometimes we feel like the only way we can get him is by continuing calling, right? But sometimes you can just shut up there. Now, if I'm not and I want to go to another depth and give him a reason why that cow's not going to him, now I can introduce a bull. But I'm not going to introduce a bull by screaming at him, bugling at him. I'm going to do some low vocalizations that he is going to recognize as another bull being with that cow as a reason why she's not coming. So that's what I mean by second depth on things sometimes. So that's again reading the cues, right?
So could you level down on that, Joe, and then level up to that? And would you go cow moving away calling, or insistent on that, right? And try that approach. Right. So then, you know, now we got our starting point, we level up, one step, and then that gives us a third option of turning around, hitting those, lower audible bull sounds, and then giving the impression that the cow is interested over there, right?
And and if I'm in,
provided you're not getting busted by a sight,
and well, that's what I was going to say. If I have the terrain and the vegetation,
Yes.
there's even where I'm going to send my bull vocalizations to another side and then have that cow moving away urgently, going like that, and then see what that bull does, and then I can actually come back in what I call a cow pickle, man. So I can come back like I'm coming to that bull, even though I'm throwing the cow sounds behind me as I'm coming forward, right? Because I don't want him to peg where I'm at. I still want him to think that I'm a little further back if I'm solo. If I'm not solo and I've got a partner, man, it's on, man, because I'm going to be that cow going away with that urgent sound and just pull him right in my toe, right? So, yeah.
And you're not being quiet, right, Joe? I mean, you're popping brush and tripping.
Yeah, man, we're
absolutely
on the ground, kicking rocks,
making it sound like a herd of elk
noise, right?
Yeah.
Yep. I want to paint the picture. I want to create the scenario. And so when we talk about scenarios, we're talking about painting a picture to convince that bull that there's other elk there doing elk things, right?
Yeah.
Tony, that's why I think we
oops.
were so successful in Canada at getting in there tight with that bull, was because we sounded like a daggum herd of buffaloes coming through there. And and really weren't trying to, but it was just the nature of the beast getting through there. He's hearing all that commotion, and then boom, we're 60 yards from him. He hears a cow whine, and man, he's just out through the roof. He's already knows that there's been some cow sounds around there, and now he's like, all right, where are you girls at, man? I've been trying to find you.
I think a lot of people get set up and they do calling and they stay in one spot for too long, and they don't make any sound but elk sounds, like vocalizations.
Right.
They don't walk around or
they don't roll any rocks. They don't kick any.
Yeah, all that stuff that elk sound like when they're in the woods. They don't just stand in one spot and continually call. They move around and they trip over roots and kick sticks and branches and all that stuff. You got to sound like elk.
That's right, brother.
Jojo, I was going to say, so we're talking cues, and for me, whenever we're talking, I am consuming it as a solo hunter. Right. But then we're talking about that calling scenario and ramping that up, stepping that up levels. And then you had said, if you have a partner, you're in the money. Yes, you are, if your partner is reading the same cue and knows how to respond. Right. So it goes back to, we had talked about it a couple eps ago, where you guys got to be on the same page. Your repertoires have to be in sync. Right. And the guy that is doing the calling has to understand that the fate of your hunting partner and that notch tag in that situation is in your hands, right? It can't be stagnant, non-dynamic, just like Tony just said, standing there, mew, 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 in one spot, right? It ain't going to work. And your hunting partner, if he gets it, is going to be pissed.
Guy, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I hunted with a guy for a few years and I'm almost always the caller. 99% of the time, and this guy, as the shooter that's up in front of me, instead of staying in one spot. Now this is how I hunt. I'm the caller. I'm the one back moving around trying to pull that bull to the shooter. That shooter stays there in that one spot, because if that shooter starts moving and he's making sounds, that bull now thinks that the elk is up there closer. And he hangs up out there, or he sees the shooter. That person has to stay there. That's, getting to your point about, communicating and being on the same page. This guy drove me nuts, because all the time he was picking up and moving because he thought he could get in better position for that bull. That's my job as the caller.
Yeah. And unless you don't have that experience back behind you and they're not doing those types of things, so
true.
It's got to be a trust consideration type thing. You got to know each other. You got to know the game. There's a lot to it, man. So
and you got to be willing to blow a few things to get in the middle of it, man.
Oh, you will.
Joe, and we will for sure. Joe and I we've gotten impatient, didn't wait long enough, and step out, and man, old Bullwinkle's looking at us going, like a dog, going, "What's up, dude?" We just got impatient. He'd been there the whole time, At the end of the day, though, you got to be willing to go through a little bit of that to get the job done. And like I've said, I'd rather blow 5 scenarios up and win on the 6th one than not get to a scenario.
That's a difficult situation, Gil. So your dynamic was you got average Joe, the killer, and caller, and you realize that. But if you got 2 guys that are, say, they're 2-year vets at it, right, and they're, one guy is all over it and he's in base camp or he's listening to podcasts, and you got the other guy that's kind of sometimey doing it, right? So then now you have these different skill levels, and they're, that is an ugly ebb and flow as they go through that.
Well,
and it's different when you know that you got a Tony Gilbertson or a Joe Gillia behind you doing that.
But see, you also got to consider this. Like Tony, he's talking from Tony's perspective because he's in the thick crap and up there in Oregon, and so he knows where that hunter is, and he can hear that bull, and he can really move around and steer him. And you have to recognize the situation, because now me, as I'm calling, and I have a shooter up there, I need to know I have a killer, because I'm in a situation in my timber that once that bull gets there, unless we have the terrain where I'm dropping down behind it, or I have thick terrain where I'm not going to be able to make that move sometimes to steer him. I can try doing it with my tube certain directions. But what I need to have a killer up there that at that point in time, he's going to have to make a move to make sure that he's in position to kill that animal. So it works both ways, Tony, on that sometimes, depending on the situation, right?
Yeah, absolutely. The terrain and your cover is going to dictate how that's going to play out, for sure.
Right. Yeah. When we blew that bull up in Canada, he didn't know who we were. He didn't know what we were. He blew out of there when he blew, and he didn't really just go out of there like his hair was on fire, like he smelled us, right? He had no clue. He turned out of there. He didn't go 30 yards and he chuckled. I'm like, oh, he has no clue who we are. Yeah. So my first thing was I dove off there like somebody shot me out of a cannon, and Dylan and Brian Hagler, they were looking at each other like, where is this dude going? What is going on here? I dove off, and Brian come around to my left. I said, go to the left. I said, if I can pull him back this way, and I pulled him within 52 yards of him. He just didn't feel comfortable taking that shot, and he goes, I would have never done that. I'm like, what, did you think it was over? I mean, he had no clue what we were. He chuckled at us when he went away.
So again, the aggressiveness statement, sometimes you got to do things to give yourself an opportunity, right?
Yeah, and I was going to go kill him. I didn't care. If he gave me if I could stop him at 45, 50 yards and get him turned around and looking at me, he's done, and he had no clue really what we were. He just knew that, man, there should have been a bunch of elk in there. And when I was standing there, I seen this big ugly fella breathing smoke out of his mouth. And he's like, man, what was that? It sure as hell didn't look like another elk or a bull, So again, man, you got to, like Tony said, you got to read the room and then, be willing to risk it, if you're going to get in there and kill them.
No risk, no reward, man. So, hey, Tony, we just got done talking about miscues. But I know for yourself, you wanted to talk a little bit about a misread sometimes. I mean, tell us about this ridge overlook.
Yeah. This was just a rookie mistake on my part. And that just, I mean, I'm not going to say that well, I will say it. I know a lot of hunters out there that are way more experienced than I am, especially early on in the season, have these same types of issues that occur for them. They make mistakes, and they're mistakes that they wouldn't normally make, but you just don't think. So my son and I are, we take this trail up to the top of the ridge, and there's a road system back in there that we usually walk out and get down to where we know these elk normally hang out. Well, instead of doing that, I decided to cut up through this clear cut, and then I get up on top of this ridge. I'm looking down over this giant clear cut, and it's 400 or 500 yards across, and the sun is shining on most of it, right? So I got my got my binos out, and I'm looking out there, and I'm trying to see if there's any elk out there, and nothing. So I was throw out a few cow calls and don't get any response. So I threw out a locate bugle, and off to my right, probably 350 yards right along the timber line in the shadows, in the shade, I saw a 6x6 bull, one of the biggest Roosevelt bulls I've ever seen in my life, with about, I don't know, 6 or 8 cows, take off running into the reap rod. And so, I mean, that was just a mistake on my part. Had I paid closer attention, and that was getting later into the morning, where the bulls are moving out of the elk are moving out of the clear cut, going towards your bedding areas, and that's where you really want to pay attention, is along the timber lines, because if they're going to be out there at that time of the morning, this is probably, I don't know, by that time sun was well up, 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning, and by that time those bulls are headed to bed, right? And I paid a little closer attention and looked into the shadows and the shade there where the sun wasn't shining, I may have been able to pick out those elk and come up with a different game plan to use the terrain and the cover that I had available to get in closer to those elk and potentially have a shot on them.
So you're saying that your rookie mistake was where you made that bugle from, because of where they were at. Had you been in a different situation, because they then looked your way and just blew them out.
Two mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
First mistake was not paying closer attention to the areas that weren't out in the sunshine, where it was more obvious where you'd see elk. So in the shadows along that tree line, and then making elk sounds from a vantage point where they could see me.
Yeah, exactly.
And obviously there's no elk there, right? And if you
how
start
far
making
away
elk
were
sounds,
they from you, bud?
they're 350 yards, something like that.
Do you know how many people, if they would have spotted them there, would have still bugled?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. I've seen it so many times. So yeah, that's a good point, Joe. I mean, that's just, these are things that really can influence an outcome.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to remember that, and some of those details that you don't think about, you walk in there, you don't see anything, you don't hear anything, you don't see the amount of sign that you normally see. Throw out a bugle thinking that they're probably already in the timber by now, and they're not quite there. And they look in your direction, they don't see elk, or they happen to see, humans. Then
Yeah, right.
They bust out of there.
Yeah. So what I'd like to do with that situation right there, for all those rosy people that are tuned in, you're up there 300 yards, you're at a vantage point, you spot that bull over there in the side. What would have been your next move?
My next move would have been back down off of that ridge, out of their line of sight,
Mm-hmm.
get over along the tree line, and work my way down. Like I said, use that terrain and that cover to get in closer to them. And there's no way you could have been quiet enough to sneak up within shooting distance.
Mm-hmm.
But at least you can watch them and find out where they go in to that timber, that reap rod patch, and work your way down in there and get close to them that way. When they took off, they were already spooked, and those elk aren't just going to wander into the timber. They took off running.
Right.
And you can't really, at that point, once they're spooked like that, it's really hard to turn that around.
So for you, like after you played the terrain, because this is always interesting, were those elk vocal? Or were you hearing those elk being vocal at all? They were quiet elk, right?
They were, not a peep. They never made a sound until they busted out and the elk scattered and they got into that reap rod, and that bull couldn't see all his cows. Then he bugled to round them up, and that was the last sound I heard.
Right.
They took
So,
off.
and again, because I got a rosy guy on here, and you've got that situation, you go down, you get to the terrain, these guys haven't made a sound, because sometimes, and I've done this, I've gone all the way in on elk, without making a noise and got myself in position because of where they were at in great position, made a call that from a location where they have not heard anything coming in because I did the Mohican sneak in, did a call, and all that did was boom, it just blew everything out, man, because again, there was no elk that was introduced. There was no reason why there should have been a call coming from that, and it just totally blew them out. So would, in your situation, when they go in there and they haven't been vocal, what is your play on your rosies?
So for me, if I'm working my way down through a clear cut like that, I don't see any elk, and by that time they've gone into the timber and I know it.
Right.
I'm starting to make elk sounds a long way from where they've gone into the timber. So
But they can't see you, right?
They can't see me. I'm making noise. I'm not trying to be quiet. I'm walking through that clear cut, stepping on sticks and kicking over logs and stuff, and I'm just making soft cow calls. And that way, they're hearing what they believe to be other elk, and it gives you the opportunity to get in. And once you get into that reap rod, then for me, I stop and I listen, and I try to hear and maybe pick up where they are, because once they get in there, it's hard to track them, it's hard to see them. So really, you have to use all your senses. Get in there, just sit in there and listen for a while, and then if you don't hear anything, work your way through there, just kind of zigzagging back and forth because it's thick, and just making a few soft cow sounds.
Yeah.
I mean, if they don't ever vocalize, then it's tough. Hunting this country over in this thick stuff is just, if they're not vocal, it's hard.
Yeah. So that's one of the things that I wanted to make sure that was heard, because when you are going to introduce yourself, because if you're in a situation you can't stock up on them like you were saying, then you got to think of something. And the for us as callers is bringing them to us or giving a reason to come to us, right? Or being able to move towards them, that we can get in their proximity sounding like another elk that's coming in there. So I just wanted to let people know that sometimes you got to really make sure that you introduce that. You got to read the room. You got silent elk, and all of a sudden you're sounding off from right next to them. That's not natural either. So,
right.
Yeah.
And I've done that same thing, Joe, where you're off in a distance and you're calling, you're working your way down there towards them, and I actually had them come back out looking for you.
Mm-hmm.
And when that happens, then I shut up again. Yeah. I duck down. I wait until they go back in, and then I start all over again, working down and get in there and closer on them. But
yeah,
Tony, would you say it's easier for you when you have eyes on them?
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. If you, especially when they're not vocal. I mean, as far as I know, if I hadn't seen them, I wouldn't have thought that there were elk there.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Well, that's my key, right? Is I'll get them in the glass and then I just cut the distance.
Oh yeah, most definitely.
Yeah, it lends itself to a lot of walking.
Yeah.
But I mean, you put yourself in the animals,
but the first
right?
time you make a peep, they know you're there.
Well, and that's the thing, right? Is I'll glass them. I might be sitting on the west ridge, glass over to the east ridge, and see them, moving around on that slope. I'm getting over to that east face off of that east ridge,
and you can
then
do
I'll
that.
Start working.
You can do that in Colorado, and there's units in eastern Oregon that you can do that. Over here on the Coast Range, unless they're in a clear cut, there's no sense in glassing because you're not going to see them.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's kind of like northern.
So something like that.
Yeah.
How are you guys using cameras, or how are you turning them up, Tony? Are you putting cameras out pre-season or anything like that?
I do put a few cameras out. And then I go out ahead of season and I just look for sign. I look for tracks. This year was it was so weird. I never saw a rub over here until, and the season started a week later this year. I never saw a rub over here until a good solid week into the season. And I saw 2 rubs over here the whole time I was over here, which was just 2 weeks before I went to Idaho.
So since we were talking about calling, RC, you got a chance to see during our coach camp this year. you had the opportunity to see what coaching was going on for calling, and some of the things that we're experiencing, and you got to see the growth and everything like that. What did you pick up on as the biggest calling mishaps or misconceptions or mistakes that you were seeing coming out of guys?
Well, I think one of the biggest things is that you put a diaphragm in your mouth and you call and you think, oh, yeah, I got this down. I got this down. Yeah. Well, you really need to have, I think that what I would do if I was a beginner, I would take and record myself. And then I would take probably that little recorder and I'd set it out in the woods and see what it sounded like, see if that sounded like an elk or not. A lot of times we make these sounds that we think that they're perfect, and they're not. I mean,
isn't that what we heard from the guys? I thought I sounded good.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And
Yeah, I thought I was doing the right thing. Well, what was beautiful about that is that we sat down with 30 minutes and saying, well, this is what you need to do. Well, in cow calls and bugling, we were trying to get him to grunt and, put a little growl in there, and he couldn't do it. And I just said, well, take that diaphragm out of your mouth and growl. Can you growl like a dog? And sure enough, that's what he did, well, oh, okay, that's what I'm supposed to be doing. Yeah. Well, after he did that, he picked that up. But it's a lot of times the issue that I saw that they thought they were doing the right thing.
It's like singing in the shower.
Yeah.
Everybody sounds like Mariah Carey in the shower.
Exactly. I don't sound like Mariah Carey. I sound like Charlie Pride.
There you go.
But you understand what I'm saying is that you need to have somebody else listen to you, or, especially go outside, because you do it in a truck or you do it indoors, it's a totally different sound, I think. And it's just like,
and what you sound like on this end of the tube sounds way different than it does coming out this end of the tube.
Exactly.
So I think to what you were saying, recording.
Not on our tube, Tony. Not on our tube.
The solo sounds so good.
Sorry, bro.
Yeah, but recording yourself and listening to that, playing that back, so you really get a sense of what you truly sound like. I think that's a great tip.
Guy, you led us in our coaching session on the call in camp, and very appreciative of you doing that with us, dude.
Man, yeah.
And I got to be there to help you and help our guys too. And just wanted to hear from you. What do you, and look, we made it happen in about an hour, really just working with them, and they grew exponentially. In an hour, they were 10 times better than they were when they showed up.
They had a good base for the practice they had put in, right? So,
not all of them.
I don't know, Joe.
If we're being honest, Joe,
no.
Some of them, I was like, man, didn't Joe coach you guys? Because that's his realm, and we're over here repairing and putting duct tape and WD-40
Joe,
on
their
it.
gear was great. Their gear was great. Their failure mechanisms were addressed, but they're calling, Joe. I don't know what happened with
The boys could shoot a bow.
Yeah, to shoot a bow. They knew they needed to draw, Joe. They knew that was the number one failure mechanism. They knew they needed to draw, man.
It goes right back to what RC was just saying, right? And Tony was saying and I think recording yourself is part of it, but having someone who is better or more adept in calling and has more experience, we'll say, having them listen to you call too is huge. The problem that I found when we first sat down is that they were call shy and they didn't want to be embarrassed,
right, and
do those calls. And I think, Joe, that's why we had an issue when you're like, send me recordings. This is going to be the number one biggest failure point if you don't have this and you weren't getting the audio that you should have been getting. And it showed when we were in the woods. I mean, you know, and God bless his heart, Bob, we were out there and Bob called and I'm like, dude, we're going back to camp because we are going to get this calling. And that was really the trigger for me to get him back to camp. And then talking to Gil's like, ooh, man, these boys need some work on the calling. Well, let's sit down. And the fact that we had myself, Gil, RC, and Chav there, and everyone was able to listen and input and give them input. And it was, you know, it's AVK, right? Everybody learns differently and everybody coaches differently. So they're hearing this, you know, RC had input, I had input, Gil had, and I mean, these boys turned around 45 minutes to an hour. And I was like, okay, now we can get out there in the woods.
Now we're ready.
Now we're rocking. This is where you should have been before you put them god dang boots on this morning. Instead of sounding like a coyote done bit you in the hiney. It was
You've gotten so good with your vocabulary, bro. Man, I just love this.
That ain't what he
That's
said
not
in
what
the
I
end.
heard the last time he said that.
Hey,
That ain't
I
what he
didn't
said in
know.
camp, but I like the coyote biting the hiney.
Yeah.
That's
I like
camp
that.
talk. This is podcast talk, right?
I absolutely love you, man. You too.
I'm trying to tone it down. a
Oh,
little
you
bit.
ain't got there is locker room talk out there, man.
I'm not in no locker room talking to nobody. That's camp talk, buddy.
So Guy, did you guys all talk to him about using instead of diaphragm, using the external recoil?
100%. I'm glad you brought that up, Mr. Tony, because I think that's where this needs to keep going is when you're not so proficient with it. There's some really good externals out there.
It is a prideful thing,
I
and we
know.
watched it for guys to use a diaphragm and not external because the Tony Gilbertsons of the world, the Joe Gillias of the world, you name it, right? The Dirk Durhams, whoever it is, you don't see these guys, even with signature externals, you don't see them using the externals as much. And then signature diaphragms. I know some Star Spangled Banner ones that have a certain gentleman's name on it, right? We got the Burnham Reds. Where's the external at, boys? Don't ask me that question. You guys got
one
the
from him.
signature daggum calls. But I think it's a pride thing because it's what's presented.
Well, I honestly feel like I still truly believe that if all you have is that external, you're creating a slight limitation in your ability to succeed on a critter that gets close because of the movement with the hands and different things like that, and because of the volume that you get with those, the directional with them. So, you know, it's great to get, especially to change your voice and in a distance and to give something to get that when nothing else is working. But when it comes to once those critters get in there, I really think the more that you are able to use that diaphragm, you're giving yourself a little bit better, right?
Yeah, but you ain't even in the game if you can't use the diaphragm. At least with the external, you're in the game.
I've heard guys blow externals and it's just biting the right butt cheek instead of the left.
No doubt.
Because
no doubt, but man, they're a whole lot easier to maintain.
Yeah, but depending on where the band is at, if they're using the band, where they're placing that external, they're biting down on the external. Is it up? Is it down? Is it teeth?
It's hard
is it
to
lips?
mess up that green weenie, man.
But
it's really hard to mess
It's
up.
hard
can
when
mess
you
it- you
have
can-
your experience.
You can mess it up.
Yeah.
Because I have. I've had the green weenie in my mouth and I was blowing it and I had a big bull come in.
Kermit.
I
And
dropped
it's this podcast.
and I didn't take it out of my mouth and it went.
It was not me for once, Joe.
I thought this was
not.
podcast talk.
Where is Manano?
What is
Where
it
is
called?
Manano when
I'll
you
call
need
it
him?
the hypercal call then. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to say that, whatever.
No, you were fine, bro.
You didn't say anything wrong. These gentlemen have their mind in the gutter or in the locker room, wherever they get into their talk there, RC.
Dude,
We'll
I
just keep it clean here.
Dude, you said that, and I looked at Guy Duplanche and I just
I kept a
waited.
straight face, dude. I was the only one. That wasn't going crazy on that. Just let RC
You're
roll right
terrible,
through it.
Chav was down there and Chav was like, what?
That's what she said. Yeah.
I just can't deal with this group anymore. You guys are just getting a little bit too obscene for me.
Oh my gosh.
So
mm.
one thing I wanted to go back to, if I can, man.
As long as it's not wieners, we're okay.
yeah.
Well, as long as it's not wieners, we're all right.
Don't be blowing on that green weenie no more, God dog it.
So one thing is that I found though that with these guys, man, my eyes are burning now. But it is that one thing that you get when we are there in close proximity, and that's one reason I wanted videos of the guys, is because I needed to see what they were doing with their mouth, right?
Yeah.
Well, my mistake is that and that's where they get that. When we're doing that repetition, they get to see the different things when we're making a sound with that call, how we are moving our mouth as well. Like, instead of using the lips, instead of doing clenched teeth, the common mistakes I saw with them, man, a lot of these guys were like, the Doc had lockjaw, man. He did not want to call.
I would push
Yeah. So when they're able to see that, when they're able to see the jaw dropping, when they're able to see, and this, I think a reason that a lot of guys are not able to do with the diaphragm call is not because they don't have the ability to. I think they just don't have a lot of things physically correct and doing things, with their.
Well, then it's harder for them to manage their air too, Joe.
Yeah,
And it's so personal too.
It is.
Yes.
It is.
Yes. We had guys that, were they're trying to make on the front end so much because at low tones, the air goes out, man. And then by the time they got to a high tone, they didn't have any
nothing
left, right? So there were a lot of reasons for that, man. Look, guys, we've been here for a while now. This has been fantastic right here. I think there were so many cool things. I think we still have a list of some of these mistakes and miscues. Our listeners out there, look, y'all, first of all, happy holidays, happy Thanksgiving. God bless all of you, your families. Cherish that time, cherish those moments. And if you're listening to this and you like what you're hearing, because I'm telling you, we have still scratched the surface on our list of some of these things that we have been seeing. If you want to hear more of these, let us know, or we're going to move on to something else, right? And go from there. So if you want to hear more of the mistakes, miscues, and misconceptions list, just email us, go on the comments, in YouTube and say, tell me more. All right. If you want to see.
I mean, we still have 4 or 5 topics that we can roll off to, Joe.
Absolutely. I mean, there's so much. I still haven't gotten to a lot of them that I have on mine. I know we haven't talked about going back to the same well. I know we haven't talked really a lot about setup. We mentioned some aggressiveness. We mentioned a little bit about when going quiet, but there's a lot of those things in there that are, I still think. And when we talk about calling, there is so much to this nuance right here that's huge. But we're going to call it at this point right here, and get ready, you guys. I want to wish each and every one of you guys,
I got you, brother.
I'm so thankful for all of y'all, because you take a lot of time. We don't get paid for any of this. This is
what? You're not doing this for free? Oh, man.
All right.
Your check's in the mail, brother.
Right back at you, Joe. This has been so fun.
It's just from our passion, and we love when we get responses from all y'all out there, because I hope you know that what we're doing here, and the people and the men that are joining with me right now, they're taking time away from their families. They're taking time from things that I know they have busy lives, each and every one of them. And they're here trying to help you have some incredible experiences and become successful out there on all different levels. So I want to thank all of y'all personally for being here and the time you spent, and to our other brothers who aren't here, to the Mafia that's not here, to Cody, to our other guys out there, the Ridge Runner, the Flatlander, Travis O'Shea over there, all the people that have come in and made this something special.
His crew, Dylan Hagler, or Dylan Cadman and Brian Hagler.
Yep.
Merry happy Thanksgiving to all of them.
All of our brothers.
Do Canadians celebrate Thanksgiving?
Yeah.
I don't know if they ought to. They got one of the most unbelievable ecosystems I've ever seen in my life in elk habitat. They just got to do some things to help themselves, man. They got to get a hold of some of their predators, man, because they got some elk there, but man, them predators are wearing them out.
Well, let me tell you what, I'm hoping, because we got states that they have things that they're getting hit with all the time, where we're ending up with some predator pits as well. So
no doubt,
we need to take care of it here at home as well, and we need to be diligent about that. But I'm just going to stay on the thankful theme for all of y'all, for all the people that listen to us.
Likewise.
And help us what we are.
It's crazy, Joe. I mean, we're coming up on episode how many?
This is 207 right here.
207. This started 3 years ago with, us just poking around and wanting to be in elk camp. And it's grown into something that I'm so proud to be part of and so blessed to be part of, getting to meet world champion elk callers like Tony Gilbertson and, having him on our show. And, I've been so blessed to grow up with some of the best elk hunters and elk callers around me. It's kind of not fair, but at the end of the day, we've had to put a tremendous amount of work in to get the content out to our brothers that are out in the elk woods. And we just want to help people. Yeah, brothers and sisters. That's right. Young people, brothers, sisters, all walks of life, man. We're here to try to cut that learning curve down so you too can be successful when you go in the woods. And guys, if you like what we're doing, please subscribe, rate, and review. You got to go to Apple Podcast or iTunes to review us, and be sure to include your name and where you're from to get in our drawing from our Spin a Winner Wheel. Always something real cool. And you can check out more elk hunting content at ElkBros.com. And just a reminder, if any of our listeners out there would like their questions answered on our show, just send your questions to info@ElkBros.com. That's INFO at ElkBros.com. And like we say down here in the Lone Star State, husbands, kiss your wives, wives, kiss your husbands, hug your babies, keep your broadhead sharp and your powder dry. And we'll see you next week right here on Blue Collar Elk Hunting. Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Turkey Day, folks.
Happy Turkey
Thank
Day.
you.
Staring out in the wild, all I see is trees. It don't take much of my time when I'm looking for peace. Quiet and a solitude, leave the world behind. It's gone crazy. I've been up and down these highways, man, I've seen them all change. There's headlights in the straightaway where I used to see for days, and 5 a.m. is rush hour, and half the world is sick, and the kids in a new generation, they can't even drive a stick shift. We need to hit the pause button, start thinking about a different way. If we could just get back to the old days. Now they want to clean the air up and run cars on batteries. There's new drugs hitting the streets these days, turning dirtbags into zombies. They're littering up the streets, shooting them needles in their veins, and they get a right to vote without any brains. Look who's running the country, Democrats or Republicans. We can't even work together. I thought that we were all Americans. So let's take out the trash, start thinking about a different way. If we could just get back to the old days. The old days were wild. They said the West was one. You never stole from anybody, or you'd see the south side of a gun. Staring down the hammer, about to close your eyes, when the man that you had stolen from was the devil in disguise. I remember as a kid hearing about that electric chair. It's bad for real bad people. There's a reason they're sitting there. If you break the law, son, better reap what you sow. 'Cause you knew right from wrong. Now hell's where you're gonna go. If you meant to take someone's life away, you bet your ass you'll damn sure pay. If we could just get back to the old days. If we could just get back to the old days.